Hi, the Magpie! And this Monday, I'm doing a bit of a housekeeping episode because there's simply so many things behind the scenes that are piling up at the moment. So I figured I have this way of communicating, so why not just do that instead of emails? It's primarily about magpiepirates.com and my company making things and selling things, but also in addition to that, the magpiestuff.com website that I'm making together with Analog Weapon, because I intend to utilize that format of a website to sort of accompany me and the magpiepirates.com website, so that, for example, I can put instructions for all the PCBs I use as faceplates, and I can also put files there, like 3D files for the feedback organ if you want to print these, but also just generally a place where I can put all the things that I want you to be able to have for circuit bending and for, you know, just developing upon the ideas that I have in here that would be really fun to see you play around with not in here. So hopefully I'm a really good person and put timestamps, because not everything is going to be relevant to everybody. For example, I'm now going to start with addressing wet. So if you don't have a wet, this might be completely pointless for you. But if you do, wait just a minute, because maybe you have something else. So you can check for timestamps and stuff like that. Some things are just going to be information. Some things I'm actually going to move over to solder to show you some practical stuff. So hopefully you stick around. Well, yeah, let's start with that thing specifically, which is the relay switch. And I use it in all my pedal designs to be able to do a soft switching type system that I call the triple bypass, that I developed together with Analog Weapon, where you have different ways of turning it on and off. So you can do on off like that, and you can also, if you hold it, now it's momentarily off until I release, and you can also do triple bypass. You might have seen me do this before, but yeah, for that you need a relay, and I go with this one. However, it's a pretty expensive component. In fact, one could argue very objectively that it's the most expensive component in some of the pedals. So I was a bit too smart for myself, and I decided to socket it, because if anything else is malfunctioning, I can simply remove it and take it to another pedal, so this one doesn't go to waste. If it was soldered in place, it would be a headache to have to desolder it. But it has now occurred that shipping was weirdly rough with it, or I had done a bad job of testing, because I really try, testing a bit so that I know that it just doesn't break. Of course, I'm not too violent. This is my units. I can be however violent I want to be. Haha! And why specifically for wet is because of the distance. You can see that this one is quite far, because it's a pretty deep enclosure. It's not the same with, let's say, this one, the Crazynator, where it's very much squeezed by the backplate. And I am now designed a 3D printed thing that I can put here and just take some super glue. Can do it. Boom. Boom. And I glue that there, and then it's gonna squeeze against the backplate. So on magpiestuff.com, you're gonna be able to download those, and I make them for all different designs, like depending on the distance. So it's hopefully never again gonna be a reoccurring issue. And if you wanna mend my mistake, you can simply do so. On top of this, with wet specifically, I did some experimenting, because that's just who I am, and I am maybe working on something where I sort of are doing something completely different, but based on the circuit in wet, which is actually based on the circuit in the feedback organ that we're going to talk about soon. But I noticed that I can get rid of two components. It's a bit tricky because they are SMD, but 2 capacitors, in fact, you can take out if you feel like it. And if you do, you're gonna get a lot more high-end coming through. Because it's a very brutal, primitive design that just, you know, raw. But I'm gonna do that modification on the last batch of wet that I intend to do, because I just think that it sounds even more brutal. So we can do a before and after here, because here's a new one where that has been done, and here's my unit where I intend to show you how you can do it yourself. So if we listen... So, as you can hear, hopefully, yeah, a bit more of the, like, the higher frequencies running into the springs. And then, of course, it is as doom boom, yes, it is, because that's just wet. It's wild and untamed. It's a beast of a raw. But, yeah, let's wrap this thing up with me simply showing you how to do it. So yeah, I have marked out the 2 components with a red marker. And so what's going on with those is that they simply have 2 tiny pads. And we want to remove the capacitor, but we want to keep the pads clean. So you're gonna have to make sure that you're not like soldering the 2 pads together when you remove it, but you simply put some solder on the tip so that you are loaded, and then you just try to get in there. Hopefully you don't have a camera in the way, and then yeah, you get it to be on your tip right there. And then you shake that away, and then you have the second one that might be a bit trickier, but not really, like it's there. So boom, it's gone. Second one, you can see it doesn't look that clean at all, so I'm gonna address that. But the other one, you can see the blue PCB between the 2 pads. But if it gets messy with fluss, like you can see on the lower one, it began for me. So one thing you can of course do is just address that with alcohol. So I'm gonna just do a little bit like that, just and that is already a lot cleaner. That's a lot cleaner. So let's move on, and just so I don't forget, I have of course uploaded a picture also, or at least I intend to do, on like a photo of the PCB, so that you can use that as a reference and that don't have to pause this video or anything when you want to see. So I marked out the 2 components. Anyways, moving on, I can address quickly these, since that's something that's gonna require a bit more work, but I still feel like I should talk about it now. I am gonna give you instructions over at magpiestuff.com. Instructions in as far as bill of material, so to speak. Like, it's very much marked out on the other side of this PCB, but just to give you a cheat sheet of what to look for. So this is a capacitor, this is the symbol for a capacitor, this is what it means briefly with NF, PF, UF. Yeah, so this is how the component look that you should probably put in here. But it's supposed to be experimental for those of you who are into doing stuff like taking things off to not have that visual appearance and instead building more. More is more. On top of that, I wanna say that I have started designing faceplates that you can download. So if you have a 3D printer, you can 3D print something to replace this cover. So I'm making one for each design. I found that fun to do, so I'm gonna upload that as well. I might even do instructional videos in the future that I won't post publicly here, but that will be accessible on magpiestuff.com if you feel like spoilers is your cup of tea. And also if you're just brand new to soldering and this is like, yeah, I don't have any kits to start with doing, but I figured this could be a fun thing to do, then of course I want to help you with that if I can in any way. So you can look forward to that if that is something that you can look forward to. I say weird shit sometimes. Anyways, the Crazynator. If you happen to be one of the few who were able to grab one, I do not intend to make any more because it's just kind of an Easter egg type pedal in itself. I made it with a voice changer toy if you don't know what the Crazynator is. So there's a circuit here on the inside that is from a voice changer toy. It's just a fun thing because I did it many years ago on this channel. It's one of my first inventions, so to speak. I designed this PCB underneath it that just runs in and picks up the signal coming out from this PCB. However, I did notice recently, because once again I was messing around on the inside as I per usually end up doing with things, and I noticed that a thing you can do that will greatly increase the feel of the two individual volume knobs. So there's one volume knob for your dry signal and one knob for the signal coming out from the toy. If you just take two 100k resistors and you put it from the two edge points on the potentiometers on the inside. If you get rid of one of the jacks, you can see there the potentiometer, like the pins sticking through the PCB. If you take the two edge legs and you put a 100k resistor just going boom boom. So of course you only have the tips sticking out there. It's just gonna increase the feel, in my opinion. Then I do wanna address this one also. Just have so many things to address. But I'm finally done with a feedback organ version 2. So it's gonna start popping up. Some of you who have emailed me about like when I released the first one and run out of the first and only batch I made of the initial feedback organ, you're gonna get emails with like, oh, I have some now, because it takes a while to build, but I'm happy. Hopefully you are as well. There are some improvements on it. I'm not gonna go deep into that now at all, actually. I'm just gonna say that there are some like, of course, it's a version 2, so it's no longer just a version 1. But for all of you that were lucky enough to get a version 1, I have decided to make a PCB with everything you can see here so that you can build that on a separate PCB. So I'm gonna provide this on magpiestuff.com, and then you can attach it. So maybe I will make like a 3D printable enclosure or something like that, or you just make your own enclosure. I'm gonna explain how you get it into your feedback organ version 1. So I'm probably gonna email everyone who has a feedback organ version 1 as soon as I'm done with that, and I'm gonna make like an instructional video. It's gonna take a while longer, so I hope you have the patience to wait for that. I would greatly appreciate it. I've also put an expression jack here, so I'm gonna show you how you can do that as well. That is for the delay. So very much like I did in Lust, one of my pedals that I should probably make a demo. But yeah, as you can see here, there's a red ring around that expression jack. And now I'm moving on so fast, but it's just because it made it easy for you to visually be like, okay, so the red one, that's expression. But it made me think that I should probably distinguish between input output also. So me and my partner came up with the idea of doing black as a black hole, sucks in signal, and white, like the sunlight, explodes out the signal. So black is input, white is output. And when I had done that for the feedback organ version 2, of course, I naturally had to do that for every pedal that I'm now making also. So from now on, all the pedals I make is gonna have black ring for input, white ring for output, and if I have an expression jacket, that's gonna be red, and so on and so forth. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna develop on that idea, but yeah, I wanted to mention that because it's just very, very beginner friendly. If you happen to be a person who has never worked with guitar pedals before, and you happen to be a person who has come across me, you can expect to have the most beginner-friendly input-output situation ever. So that's an USP, right? MagpiePedals.com. I think of USPs. But yeah, of course, this one I'm gonna address way soon. So I do also quickly want to follow up the PCB for the feedback organ. That type of PCB, I have two here. Same with the Crazynator also. This one is more like the feedback organ. This is more in the Crazynator vein of PCBs. So this here is a sequencer, so a 10-step sequencer. It's all through hole that is specifically made for circuit bending. However, one can make a sequencer specifically for circuit bending, you might ask, but I have done that. So I'm gonna put PCBs that I make up on magpiestuff.com so you can just get that file and order it yourself if you feel like it, basically. If I invent stuff that is not necessarily a product that I could release as, under magpiepedals.com. Instead, you will have to build it yourself, but I will also make a video like explaining, because usually it's very rudimentary stuff. I say usually as if I've done it before. I mean, it's in the future usually gonna be very rudimentary stuff, because there's no point for me to not make it as easy as possible, because it's something that I'm gonna want to be able to put together to put in another thing, so to speak, especially for circuit bending. This one being a great example, because I figured that having a sequencer in something that you have circuit bent that you can sync to other gear and shit like that is a pretty dope idea. I'm doing the same. No, I'm actually not gonna spoil. I stopped myself. So yeah, you can expect stuff like that. And also, if we go more in this direction, which is the same direction as the Crazynator, if I make stuff that I want to sell a few of, but that I feel like if I make things that I don't want to continue making, it's more in the category of what I want to have made, I'm also just going to provide those PCBs. And on top of them just being for you to download over on magpiestuff.com, when I get to a point of having maybe 10 different ones or something like that, I don't know what the good number is, feel free to come with feedback in the comment section, but if I have X amount of things that I have invented, I could essentially put together a PCB kit that I can sell over on magpiepedals.com. So you would get like 3 or 4 of this PCB, and then 3 or 4 of a couple of other ones, one of these, one of that, you know. So like a pack of PCBs with instructions. It wouldn't be a kit in as far as it including all of the parts, but at least a bunch of PCBs. So I think that could be really fun. If you disagree, feel free to do so, because I don't know if it's a good idea or not just yet. However, hopefully some of this was exciting for some of you, because part of me is always watching. That's not how I want to end this. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you very, very much for supporting my work by buying anything of magpiepedals.com. And also thank you if you decide to check out magpiestuff.com. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes in regards to that, but I can't really address it at the moment because it's big, very big, Very exciting. So coming soon. Also, if you're here and you are a channel member or Patreon and you don't really get why the podcast has gone missing for a good while, there's a reason, and it's a good reason, in my opinion, and hopefully your opinion, and you're gonna get an update very soon on why. So you can look forward to that. Of course, it's gonna be a public update also, but way after, of course, you get priority. And yeah, stay not here.